Hi, this is Eric from longboxreview.com. Welcome to the show and welcome to my pull list review for comics that I read in May of 2021. And those comics include Batman and Catwoman number 4, Green Lantern season 2, issue number 12, Amazing Spider-Man numbers 31 through 42, and Giant Days volumes 6, 7, and 8, Spectacular Spider-Man number 14, Decorum number 7, Superman Heroes number 1, that was a one-shot special, I think, The Union number 4, Truth and Justice number 2, The Fantastic Four by Wade and Wieringo, numbers 67 through 70, and then 500 through 502. Aria, Heavenly Creatures, which was a one-shot, and then finally, Copperheads Volume 3 and 4. Now, I'm not going to talk about all of these. There were just some of these, about half, I think, that I wanted to touch on. And just like all pull list reviews episodes that I do, these are just some quick thoughts about these issues or these trade collections that I have read that I just wanted to say a few things about. So without further ado, we'll get right into it. I'll start off with Green Lantern Season 2, number 12. So this is the end of the Grant Morrison written and Liam Sharp arted, drawn and colored by Liam Sharp series. This was, I think, based on an interview that I read with Grant Morrison, this was supposed to be his last work for DC for the foreseeable future, because the actual last published thing, which is, I think, coming out at the time of this recording, which is Superman and the Authority, either that or it's about to come out, was actually completed, at least from Grant Morrison's point of view, written before Green Lantern. Anyway, here we are with the end of that series. And much like other Grant Morrison works, I need to reread this. I felt while there were stronger single issue stories in this arc, the overall story was which is not usually what not a reaction I usually have in regards to Grant Morrison's work. So yeah, I would not count this as one of his better superhero offerings. I will extremely miss Liam Sharp's stunning visuals. If I were to give a best artist nod for the books I've read this year so far, actually it comes down to Sharp or Huddleston on Decorum. but having looked at both the issues, like I said, number 12 for Green Lantern and Decorum number 7, I would give the nod right now to Liam Sharp, because despite what I said before in a previous pull list review about Green Lantern issue, I forget which one, maybe 10, because the coloring is so dark in a lot of the issues, I think that is the only negative I can throw at Sharp's art, because otherwise it's so intricate and the palette is just so wide ranging and beautiful. Generally speaking, it's just beautiful art. The pages are like it's like looking at a painting in a museum. That's how wonderfully constructed this book has been from the very beginning. So, if you've not checked out the Green Lantern book by Sharp and Morrison, you should certainly do so. Next up is Amazing Spider-Man, issues 31 through 42. So, when I got the Marvel Unlimited app, the very first thing I read, and I've already talked about this, is that Iron Man issue by Christopher Cantwell and Cafu. But the thing that I wanted to start reading was these old Amazing Spider-Man issues, because not necessarily to read Peter Parker's adventures, but to read about Gwen Stacy. I've always been fascinated by the Gwen Stacy versus Mary Jane Watson debate, and considering that when I came into Spider-Man comics, Gwen Stacy was already dead. I've already talked about this in other episodes of the show, but one of the very first comics that I bought that started me on my comic book collecting journey for the last several decades was a reprint of the issue in which Gwen Stacy dies. So, but the contemporaneous Spider-Man issues that I read featured MJ in them. So, so I've been always wanting to read those earlier issues, those are earlier Amazing Spider-Man issues, so that I get to see the introduction of Gwen Stacy and the introduction of Mary Jane Watson and how the two of them interact with Peter Parker and how, because I know that he ends up with Gwen Stacy for a while, and then when she dies, Mary Jane is there to help him heal. So I just want to read through these issues and discover how all that unfolded. So that's what I'm doing. I started with the first appearance of Gwen Stacy with issue 31. I believe that's correct. Anyway, I am skimming the rest of the issue as I'm going through these. I mean, sometimes I'll get caught up in what's going on in terms of the action of Spider-Man, but I mostly am reading and focused on the Gwen Stacy scenes. And it's been interesting. Gwen Stacy, when she first appeared, is while she is interested in Peter Parker, his aloof nature, because he's so focused on his school and what he's dealing with as Spider-Man and his aunt, that he comes off as aloof and disinterested in her, and so that kind of puts her off. But she still senses something about him. Anyway, so I'm at the point now where she's really starting to, I think, fall for Peter. She certainly has rebuffed Flash Thompson in I think the last issue that I read, which was 42. So these issues were done by Steve Ditko, of course, earlier on, and then these last few issues that I read, John Romita Sr. has come in to do the art, along with Mike Esposito on inks, and I think somebody else I'm forgetting. Anyway, of course, written by Stan Lee. So I found it interesting that Ditko's Gwen is, starts off at least. Like I said, I'm reading these digitally, so maybe the coloring is different. I hope not. But she's silver haired, and her features are a little more angular, and her expressions are it comes off a little more strict. But I see now why people have praised Steve Ditko's art. When I first encountered Steve Ditko's art, it was in these old Spider-Man Treasury-sized reprints, and it was the earlier stuff, like the first appearance of Spider-Man and whatnot. And I thought it was like really rough art, like a golden age style of art. And in those early Spider-Man issues, I still think that. But in the later issues, as I'm reading, I can see, his style is more dynamic, and it's unique compared to others of that time period. So, you have Kirby, which is, a whole other thing, and then you have Ditko. I totally see it now. I totally see why everyone fell in love with this comic book. But I will admit, I still prefer Romita Sr.'s art overall. His Gwen, her face becomes more rounded, softer. Yeah. And also I noticed, even in the Ditko issues, whoever the colorist was, and that's not listed in the credits for these issues, that I saw. Not necessarily in the issue in themselves, but in the screen that introduces the issue in the app. So, that's a fault of the app, perhaps. But I've noticed that while Gwen started off as Silverhead, and I know this is just a stupid detail, but slowly they started introducing her more as blonde, which is how I was first introduced to her. She was this beautiful blonde young woman whose life was cut short by, technically, I guess, Spider-Man, but because of the Green Goblin. But anyway, so yeah, I am looking forward to continuing on with more Amazing Spider-Man issues. Next up is one of my very favorite comic books of last year that I talked about in my favorites of 2020 episode. This is The Giant Days, volumes 6 through 8. These are by Max Sarin, Liz Fleming on art, written by John Allison, Whitney Koger on colors, and Jim Campbell letters. Okay, so basically these 3 volumes cover Daisy, Susan, and Esther's second year at university. Along the way, they move in together. One of them enters a new relationship, while another, I should say, re-enters an old one. And while their paths seem to be diverging, by the end, their friendships continue to be strong. As is the amount of joy this book continues to bring me in each and every volume. I can't even go over each and every wonderful little tidbit. Sometimes I laugh out loud, and sometimes it's just I see the joke, the beautifully constructed joke, whether it's through the dialogue or whether it's a sight gag or something that just brings me a lot of joy. The girls, when they move in together in volume 6, they deal with their new place. They get robbed. McGraw, Susan's ex-boyfriend, is only living a few blocks away, which that's the re-entered relationship that I mentioned. And in volume 7, let's see, Susan's dad, I think. Is this the volume? There's just so much I've read of this. I don't remember now. It's been a while. Oh no, I guess his dad or her dad came in near the end of volume 6. Anyway, so he ends up coming and staying for a while, and Susan has to deal with the fact that her parents aren't getting along. Daisy enters like I said, she's the new relationship where she meets up with this German student, and they get together, and it's not. It's a just like any new relationship, that the bloom of the rose and all that wears off, especially when her girlfriend moves in and causes some friction between the 3 girls. So that was funny. And then finally, Susan and McGraw decide that they are going to move in together, and because of the tension between Susan's girlfriend and Esther, things are not looking good as far as the girls being together at the end of this volume. So they give up their lease on their place, and there was a cute little scene. Just again, this is one of the examples that I have of this, where the landlord. There's a scene of the landlord holding a picture of him and the girls that Esther took while he was looks like he's repairing a cupboard door or something, or maybe a closet door or something, and he's getting teary-eyed, and he said, "Quite a ride." And this is this is over the top comedy, so to speak, but this is I think kind of how the readers are feeling about this situation with the girls. So looking forward to seeing what comes next for these 3 young ladies. All right, Truth and Justice number 2. This is by Janoy Lindsay is the artist, Marissa Louise colorist, Brendan Easton is the writer, and Enroll Design did the letters. This is basically Superman versus racism, which, from my particular point of view, is a very good depiction of how Clark Kent. This is really a story about Clark Kent versus a Superman story, because he encounters this young man who was in jail, and he disappears from jail and then is found and then disappears again. Basically, it's someone who is removing people from jail because he is being paid to do so. So he's taking advantage of all these these family members of people who were put in jail. Perhaps, well, in this particular case, this is a miscarriage of justice, and so he's taking advantage of people and taking their money, and then manipulating events to basically get these people caught again, or he catches them again. So, he's gaming both sides of the system there in terms of what's going on. Along the way, Clark is writing a story about the implicit racism in American society. In fact, the article that he writes is called "The Revolving Door: The Mass Incarceration of Black Men in America." So like I said, I enjoyed it because this depicts my particular viewpoints on things where, what's going on here is wrong. A lot of the things that from, I'll say, the other side that are expressed in here, while I agree with the take on this stuff, I will say I felt like the story was a bit heavy-handed without a lot of nuance, such as like the incendiary talk show host, the way he is talking to Clark Kent, and I'll read some of that here in a second. And then some of the Metropolitans, the citizens of Metropolis, their opinions about Black people are the same as many of the people I've heard throughout my life. In fact, some of them, unfortunately, are in my family, my extended family, and of course, stuff I've seen online, seen on news reports, and boy, has it definitely been exposed, come to light. But it's been more prominently displayed in the last 4 or 5 years. But being subtle rarely changes anything. Sometimes you need a hammer to have an impact, and so that's what this story is more like. It's more like a hammer. But the end of the story, even the end of the story admits that its own simplistic presentation or simpler presentation isn't enough, but the effort needs to continue. So I quite enjoyed it. Let's see. So some of the stuff here that I'm talking about, this is, like I said, Clark's working on this article, and he's being interviewed by this guy named Jack Newman on his show American Justice from the Patriot News Service. So, there are parallels that can be drawn with what's going on today. His tagline is "Bringing real truth to real Americans." Like, the rest of us aren't real. Okay. So he starts off, is this article some kind of apologist's screed? Surely the rates of incarceration match the number of offenses from all the known data. Black men commit more crimes than any other group in the United States. To which Clark replies, the "black men commit more crimes," quote unquote, argument is deeply misleading and the worst kind of fear-mongering. Black men are arrested more per capita than any other group. That is true, but being arrested does not equate to having committed a crime, especially when you consider exoneration rates. Jack replies, there's no massive police conspiracy to randomly lock up black men. Clark says, my research revealed a confluence of factors: hyper-aggressive policing in black neighborhoods, precinct commanders demanding arrest quotas, implicit bias fueling negative interactions. Jack interjects, when did it become okay to break the law? Where's the sympathy for the victims of violent crime? And then Clark says, when I was a kid in Smallville, I knew every police officer's first name. They knew mine. There were times when I should have been arrested for silly teen stuff. I believe if I had been black or Latino, I would have had a criminal record, and that would have radically altered the course of my life. So I can't tell you how many times I have seen exchanges like this on, say, like CNN or even Facebook comments. So, they did, Mr. Easton did a good job of taking the zeitgeist of this situation and transcribing it in the way that he did. And then at the very end, after the article has come out, Clark is on the subway looking through the newspaper as other people are reading it. And, maybe this is something that he does. Yeah, he does. He says, whenever one of my major pieces is published, my tradition is to monitor the vibe of our readership in real time, for better or worse. Anyway, so this older white guy, again, not being subtle, but true. He says, I usually enjoy this guy's writing, but I'm tired of this liberal hogwash being stuffed down my throat. A woman next to him says, I heard about that article, black guys being arrested more often or something like that. And he says, where I come from, if you don't break the law, you don't get arrested. Oh my God. That is like a direct quote from a particular family member. And then a young black man speaks up and says, where I come from, you don't have to do much to be considered a lawbreaker. A guy like you will always get the benefit of the doubt. You'll never be viewed as a threat. And then we get some internal monologuing from Superman. What can a Superman do? I'm not here to legislate attitudes, but maybe I can change one mind at a time, provide an example. The young black man continues, when people look at me, their first inclination is to assume that I'm a criminal or engaged in something negative. And the old white guy, he's kind of looking at the kid. At first, he's a little surprised. And then he turns his head away and brings the paper closer to him and says, ha, that old white guilt trick. Don't work no more. Have a pleasant day. And the kid says, sure, whatever, man. Clark says, a kind word can shift perceptions, remove a fear, eclipse doubt. And he goes up to the young man and says, just want to say I appreciate you reading my work. Thank you for giving me the benefit of the doubt. And that's pretty much how the story ends. I don't know that we needed that interaction from Clark, but it kind of speaks of or comes across as a bit of a white savior thing. But I think the point was made with the young man speaking up. But man, that kind of crap, just the TV show host and that white guy on the train. I don't get it. I don't get those attitudes. It's ridiculous. So, not Truth and Justice number 2, not pulling any punches, not trying to be subtle about anything, very in our faces about racism in America these days, and how more so Clark Kent than Superman, but is dealing with it. So I appreciated that. I actually like that kind of stuff. Bring it to light, maybe educate some people, maybe not. I don't know. Considering all the crap that the Comicsgate folks spew that I see online, more things like this are needed, I think. Unfortunately. All right. Next up is Fantastic Four. So this is the Fantastic Four by Mark Waid and Mike Wieringo, the Ultimate Collection. This is volume 2. This collects Fantastic Four numbers 67 through 70 and numbers 500 through 502. So this is the Fantastic Four series from 1998. And it is here, says here, Dr. Doom wants to destroy the Fantastic Four once and for all, and what he'll do to achieve victory is unthinkable. When Doom balances his technological power with new magic, he strikes at his greatest enemies in new ways. Franklin, sent to hell, the Thing, beaten nearly to death. Valeria's first word, Doom. And Reed, fresh out of ideas. Life for the Fantastic Four will never be the same after this. This was a pretty amazing volume, I have to say. That opening story, Unthinkable, which is the prologue to this whole thing, in issue 67, really surprised me. I've never read a Doctor Doom as scary and ruthless as this one. What he did to his first love in that opening story was just, I honestly thought it was going somewhere else. I did not anticipate. I should have, I guess, because it is Doom after all. But the way, it's just the way that Wieringo and Waid are telling the story, they did an awesome job of subverting my expectations. And so I'm coming at this the Wieringo and Waid era on Fantastic Four after I read many years ago now, but I read the Hickman written Fantastic Four and then later Secret Wars, and seeing the Doctor Doom Valeria relationship, what that ends up, or later ends up becoming, and how it's depicted, and then to read this to see how it all got started is interesting to say the least. The violation that Doom instigates on Valeria specifically, but then the Richards family is just insidious. I mean, I've read Doom's appearances in other Fantastic Four stories over the years and other series as well, and this is a completely different Doom to me. Not just from the point of view of his. Basically, he's embracing the supernatural, the magic side of his arsenal, and in doing so, he seems to have lost his soul, or at least a bit more of his soul. I'm not a Fantastic Four expert. I have not read a lot. The most I've read is the Hickman stuff, and now the stories in these Ultimate collections, the Ringo and Wade collections. So, I'm sure there are other people out there who are far more versed in the Fantastic Four lore, who would know better. But I was just blown away by this depiction of Doom, and he basically won. At the end of this, he has won. During the course of this whole thing, everybody has gotten hurt in different ways. Ben and Johnny, like it mentioned, Ben is nearly killed. Ben and Johnny are physically injured. Johnny gets, I think it's the hell scene where he's trying to rescue Franklin. I think that's what it was. Anyway, he gets burned, and there's this great little, just a short little scene where he gets splashed with this stuff on his leg, and it burns him, and that's a sensation he's not felt since he became the Human Torch, and so it shakes Johnny quite a bit, and Ben, Ringo even draws Ben with this huge. I saw it in one panel as I was kind of flipping through it to prepare for this. He's got where his rock skin is. He's got this chunk that's missing. That's just gotta hurt. Like I said, Franklin is haunted by his brief time in hell. There's a point where Sue is trying to comfort him, and they take him out to the boardwalk to get his mind off things, and because I think he wasn't talking, and that was concerning them, so they're trying to comfort him and get him to be happier. Anyway, he eventually does start talking, and what we discover is that the world around him and his family, he still sees himself in hell, literally in hell. So everything that they've been talking about and what they've been doing, what they've been seeing, as we've seen it throughout the pages, is not the reality that Franklin is seeing. And so that was just a wonderful reveal when I got to that point. Of course, Sue is the distraught mother whose children are in peril. And I, as a father, that part of it, even though it was not, I don't think it was given its due in the story, how that impacted Sue and what she's going to do about it. I felt like more of the weight of the story was put on Reed and his need to not just protect his family, but to stop Doom and whatnot. So Reed's always shown depicted as detached a lot of the times and not focusing on the right things at the right time. But I will say it was fun to see Reed accept that he was outsmarted, and he has to embrace basically he goes to Doctor Strange or Doctor Strange goes to him. I forget now the details, but he needs to learn magic essentially. And he's having a hard time with it because magic is not science, and science is what Reed knows. And so he basically has to forget his smarts to be able to use the magic and to not defeat Doom, but to fight him to a stalemate essentially by the end of this. Even though things do go well by the end of this collection, even Reed does not come out of this unscathed physically, and so we get that scene where Doom has altered Reed's face, so he's basically melted half of his face. So I'm now very much looking forward to getting back to reading Volume 3 of the Ultimate Collection and to see what comes next. Okay, finally, I have Aria, Heavenly Creatures. This is a one-shot from Image Comics. This is by Jay Anacleto with Brian Haberlin. Illustrations written by Brian Holgan and colored by various people. Drew Posada, Raymond Lee, Brian Haberlin, and lettered by Francis Takanaga. So one-shots are something that I generally tend to just buy because I like them. I just find the idea of a one-shot comic book fascinating. Why a publisher would even want to put out a one-shot like this. I having done some research now, I understand why they put this out. But anyway, when I see a one shot, I generally just buy it. I don't really care what it is, because it's a low entry or basically a low money entry point. What am I trying to say there? Anyway, there's not much to it, right? Because it's one comic book, and so you're getting exposed to something new, maybe even new creators. And you get to try something at a essentially a low price point because you don't have to keep buying. It's not a mini series; it's not an ongoing series. So, like I said, I quite enjoy getting these one shot comic books to discover something new, and this is something new. Well, so to speak, it's new to me. So, this is basically a collection of old material that was previously, as it says here in the Image solicitation, previously published in 2000 under a different title. And so this is, Aria was a series in the late 90s, early 2000s, I think. There were 3 collected volumes released in the early 2000s. And what I find really fascinating about this is that why was this material released as a one-shot now? And so I did some digging, and I found an article on Monkeys Fighting Robots that informed me that the character, the Spawn character Angela, crossed over and into the Aria material, and so because of the legal issues with the Angela character, they couldn't republish this stuff, I guess. And so what it looks like they've done, the creators have done, at least Holgan and Haberlin have done, is they basically went through the stuff and stripped out Angela. Not completely. Well, they don't call her Angela. She doesn't quite look like Angela. But they took the Angela character and turned her into a general or generic angel, so they could print this. I'm still curious though. Is this a precursor to something? Are they going to start reprinting the other Aria issues? Is this a way to drum up interest in the property and maybe get optioned for film or TV? I don't know, but I did find the story generally fascinating when I read this solicitation, and here I will read it for you. It made me interested because I like these kinds of stories, generally speaking. So it says here, Lady Kildare, expatriate princess of Faerie, is living a life of aristocratic decadence among Victorian London's social elite. One night, while slumming among the city's notorious underbelly, Kildare and her companions come across an illicit underground sideshow boasting, quote, creation's most wondrous and perverse curiosities. The centerpiece of this bizarre menagerie, a genuine angel held in captivity. This sets the stage for an unlikely alliance and the beginning of an unforgettable tale of mystery, adventure, and retribution. So, yeah, you give me a Victorian tale with angels, and yeah, I'm in for that. So, in fact, when I read the descriptions of the 3 volumes that they printed in the early 2000s, I kind of want to go get those if I can find them cheaply anyway, because the whole idea of this princess of fairy helping out her fellow fae folk here in the real world is intriguing. I will say it sounds a lot like Fables in some way. If I'm going to level a criticism against this book, it reminds me a lot. Well, or not just reminds me, and not just for the Angela character, but it comes across as taking a lot from Neil Gaiman's stories, Sandman and other things that I've read of his. So I know fairy stories and set in London are not exclusive to Neil Gaiman, but considering that he has done a lot of that kind of stuff, you can't help but wonder if that was an inspiration, we'll say, for this work. Even when I was reading this, speaking of Angela, even when I was reading this, I thought, well, this character sure reminds me an awful lot of Angela. And that's before I found out that's what was going on. So there you go. Because this material was originally printed in the Aria series, there's a lot of this narration to ground us in the story, to give us an introduction, and then as means of tying the various pieces together. And I found that kind of stuff grating. I understand why they did it. It makes sense to do it. But I don't know. I just didn't care for the kind of purple prose of what we get here. For example, now where was I before we were interrupted? It was a golden age of empire, of art and exploration and invention. England slept soundly at night, safe in the knowledge that her power and position were unrivaled in the modern age. And when she slept, she dreamed. Richly scented opium dreams, filled with the jewels of pharaohs and rajas that would rain like hailstones into her coffers. I mean, it's not, bad or anything, but it's a little overwrought, perhaps. I did like the art. It was in the, I'll say, Brian Haberlin style that I am used to. I realize that Jay Anacleto is credited as the main artist, but this reminds me an awful lot of Haberlin's other work that I've read, and Haberlin and Holgan work together quite frequently, and I've purchased quite a few. Well, not quite a few. Some of their other works. One of which, Faster Than Light, is something that I've talked about in the show before, and I particularly enjoyed it quite a lot. And then there was some more recent stuff that they did where I didn't like it as much, and mostly it was because of the art. I have to say, there's something about Haberlin's style, and maybe I'm putting too much emphasis on Haberlin here, but like I said, it reminds me a lot of his work on other books that I've read. But the faces, a lot of the times the faces in this book, the expressions on their faces especially, reminds me of the animation in the Polar Express movie, where, and I remember a lot of people talking about this, where it was groundbreaking to see because it was very, very realistic depictions of human beings in animation style, but there's just something just off about it that the animation came across as off-putting or even kind of alien. It's like it kind of rubbed people the wrong way, as I recall. It certainly did me, and that's kind of what I get sometimes out of this. But this is certainly better than some of the other more recent works that I've read, and I attribute that to Anacleto's art more than anything else. And despite the fact that there are so many color artists on this, it's very well done in that way. The lighting in the scenes are appropriate for where they're set, And maybe this is purposeful. Maybe this shouldn't be a criticism, but the way that things are colored, maybe that is because the light source are candles. I'm not entirely sure, but anyway, these criticisms are not greater than the sum of its parts. So I did enjoy this, and I would actually, like I said, like to read more of these characters, read more about these characters. So, okay, that is all I have for my comic books that I read in May. And so I will leave you with those. And please let me know if you've read any of these and have any thoughts about them, or the other books that I mentioned at the top of the show that I did not talk about. And you may do so, as always, by sending me email at longboxreview@gmail.com. Visit the website, longboxreview.com, and for other things, such as my 52 reviews, the Series 52 from DC Comics, and check out the latest The Legion Project podcast episodes that Peter Rios and I are doing. Thanks for listening, and I will talk to you later. Bye-bye.